The Orion. So yeah, hey, welcome. It's the third channel. This one's gonna be much more chill because I'm gonna talk about stuff I have fun with and the stuff I enjoy. I didn't expect it. I did not expect it, but everybody kind of liked the first one of these, so I don't know how many more I'm gonna do. We're about to get monetized. I think after this video, this should put us just over the edge. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate all the love and support you guys have given, just for ranting about how fun it is to watch Rambo beat up a bunch of communists. Let me just try one thing here. I guess we color key it. If I color key it to black, does this work? It works well enough. I'll go with that. There's the logo for the screen. Yeah, we'll go with that. I think I need to make a white version of it anyways. Yeah, so welcome. Riffing on Gattaca. Before we do that, though, let me give you a little preview of what the channel's got. If you're new to it, dude, check it out.
Do you like hardcore action, big explosions, and 7-foot-tall aliens? How about a gritty crime drama or a buddy cop movie? Do you want witty one-liners, laser guns, a double cross, gratuitous nudity for no reason other than it's awesome? 80s karate fights, fast car chases, and 90 minutes of a great time? Well, I have 4 words for you. I come in peace.
I can't watch old movies, new movies anymore. I can't. I've been loving the old stuff. And it's not because of nostalgia or anything like that. Just they are written better. And somebody left a comment on the I Come in Peace one. It's up to like 20,000 views. It's already one of my I think it's my second most popular video I've ever done on YouTube. The only one that's more popular is the Chick Talk, where I laugh at the 42-year-old with short hair. Which I'm like, all right, fair enough. And I agree, gratuitous nudity is the best nudity. The best nudity. So, like, why Gattaca? Well, first, I got to finish the Rambo video. The Rambo video is going to be coming out shortly. I've got probably another 50% of the editing to do. I've just been so distracted by the second book. So don't worry, it will be there. Obviously, this one's on a much slower pace for movie releases, but once I finish this manuscript, I'm probably gonna have nothing but time on this one. If I really bust my ass and don't have other projects, I could probably get a video a week done on this, which means, is there 52 videos a year I'd want to talk about? And that's the question. My list is only about 30 right now, so I don't think that's a very reasonable schedule. But yeah, I realized, what is it that people don't like about good movies? And I'm seeing there's like a trend. Either, I don't know how much of it is me influencing it and how many of it is other people influencing me on it, but Solar Sands, he's a fairly big YouTube channel. He just kind of done his own video essays. Just did one about Star Wars of all things, and I'm like, oh, another one? But his take was interesting. It's kind of why he doesn't like the artistic deadening of the current entertainment landscape. And so we're kind of on the same page there. And I realized it wasn't like, I didn't like I Come in Peace because it was space aliens with guns. We have space aliens with guns in the new Star Wars, and I can't stand it. I don't even want to watch it. And if they come out with a new movie right now, I just assume it's going to be shit, and I'm usually proven right. If I have to watch it on an airport or in an airplane, I'll usually be like, oh, why am I doing this? So the one thing that was nice about the book is doing a lot of like deep dives into the art of storytelling and how to get better at that, and what tells good storytelling from bad storytelling, and a screenplay versus a book versus a speech. Yeah, and you realize it really was like, there's the technical aspects of movie making. There's the cinematography, there's the sound design, there's the costumes, there's the acting, there's the blocking, there's the directing. There's like 200 jobs that go into a movie, and if they're all done well, you get your Die Hard, like your cinematic masterpiece kind of movie. It doesn't matter if it's highbrow or it's lowbrow, it's just perfect. But I'm like, not necessarily, because again, on this channel, King of the Kickboxers, from a technical execution standpoint, it's got some things it does, like the fight choreography is just fucking amazing. The costume design is pretty goddamn good. The acting is horrible. The acting is just ridiculous. The plot is like, You can tell some things are like, well, you have to have this scene here, but it wasn't really planned. Like, it's not really well done, but it still works. And so I'm like, clearly there's something more than just technical execution. The Star Wars films, amazingly technically well executed. Nobody wants to watch them. King of the Kickboxers, horrible execution. Well, not even horrible execution, but you can tell it's like not detail oriented consistently. Still an amazing movie. What's the difference? And this is like, is it a good story? And then, you get into like Marshall McLuhan, your hot mediums and your cold mediums, which if you don't know, I would say it's probably when it comes to understanding entertainment or news or anything you have to absorb socially outside of a conversation in real life, I would say Marshall McLuhan is the true Canadian intellectual. He came up with the concept of hot mediums and cold mediums. And hot mediums were things you just passively consume. If you sit in front, watch Saturday morning cartoons, you just sit there and you watch it and it all is in there and you don't have to do anything. That's a hot medium. When you think of just like, the guy sitting there drinking slop, that's hot medium. Cold mediums require you to use like your own cognition. Hearing a baseball game on the radio is a cold medium because he's describing the baseball game, but I have to think, like, what does that mean? He's cracking the bat. They add the sound effects. Like, your imagination has to fill in a lot of the blanks. Books, cold medium. Radio, cold medium. Television, as he described at the time, hot medium. Internet, it can go either way. Sometimes hot medium, sometimes cold medium. Movies, again, depending on how they're made, can be a hot medium or a cold medium. And in this sense, I've noticed that the technical deficiencies in a movie like King of the Kickboxers actually serve the purpose of making it a better cold medium than a hot medium, which makes it more enjoyable. And like, here's a good example as a kid. Like, oh, what the fuck does all this mean? Do you ever remember watching WrestleMania as a kid, and then as soon as it was over, you and your brother started fighting? That's what a cold media does, as opposed to you guys just watch a movie then go home. Like, if you've never wanted to beat your brother's ass after watching a movie, then it hasn't sufficiently, like, endeared itself to your consciousness. I don't think. And I think they did it by accident, but I also don't, because again, if you watch, because it's a Hong Kong movie, they made it in Hong Kong. They made it in Thailand, but it's a Hong Kong team, so Chinese, and they were heavily influenced by the Chinese opera. And you're like, that's a bit of a stretch. It's not though. Because if you ever watch movies from the 50s, they were highly, highly influenced by the theater. The British theater, the American theater, vaudeville, stuff like that. You'll see it when you're watching like old black and white films and the way they're staged. They're staged like a theater production and you're in the audience. The sets are designed like theater set pieces. The dialogue is like theater set pieces. You'll notice it when you see somebody, like when they're looking and facing each other. You wouldn't be able to see them, but on a movie, if you're meant to look at both of them and they have their shoulders turned outward, it's a very unnatural way to stand when you're talking to each other. Like, I don't talk to somebody here like this. But for the audience, they can understand it. And that's when you realize, oh, this is not supposed to be real life. This is supposed to be theater. But it's more. It's like theater plus. Theater plus. I always like that. So then once you kind of understand that you have to, on some level, for every movie, you have to fill in the blanks. You have to imagine things. You have to understand it's not meant to be real. It's meant for you to process it as a work of fiction. And there's all kinds of hundreds of little examples you see. The French New Wave was big on this. They talk about removing shoe leather. Like, you know how nerds will always be like, nobody ever says goodbye on the phone. They just hang up. Why is that? That's so rude. Nobody would do that in real life. It's like, that's true. But you know what? That's 10 seconds of footage that you don't need. Everybody knows how a phone call works. So you don't need to visually represent the phone call perfectly. Just say the pieces of dialogue that move the story forward, hang up the phone. Well, that's rude. Yeah, wrestling's not real, man. In reality, if Hulk Hogan does a suplex and drops The Undertaker on his fucking head, he's not getting up to chokeslam Hogan because he just had a neck injury. But this isn't real life. This is fun. This is wrestling. This is entertainment. Well, technically, after he does a leg drop like that, he should just be able to, like, shut up. Shut up and stop being autistic. Enjoy things. Yeah, the old park bench or walk and talk excuse. Exactly. And you realize, yeah, they know. They do know. But they know you know. And that's the point. And that gets me to why I love Gattaca. Dude, Gattaca is, I would say it's probably, if not my favorite film, my top 5 favorite films. And I'm going to make the argument on the script. And part of this is me processing how I'm going to do the script. One of the most masculine movies you've probably ever seen, because it cuts to the core of it. It doesn't do what hardcore action does. Masculine is muscles. It's being able to be, stabbed in the neck. It's not like Rob Roy where, well, Rob Roy is actually a really good example of masculinity too, but for a different reason. But you know what I mean? It's that fantasy. It's the, what was it? Good storytelling is the ordinary taken or delivered as the extraordinary. Die Hard. It's a story about a man who's trying to get back together with his ex-wife. All it took was like 12 terrorists and a C4 explosion to get there. But ultimately, that's something you can associate as a guy. You're like, dude, I've been a hardworking guy with a nice job, and my wife wanted to move to the city and do this, that, and the other thing, and she wanted to divorce, and she took the kids, and I'm the divorced guy, and I come back to win her back. Like, everybody can associate. Like, I get that. But then you see that through the lens of a skyscraper action film, and you're like, oh, dude, that's my life plus. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Everybody has been a kid who had to do a really hard project, last minute and get through the book report. And then they just add a time traveling phone booth. Like, oh, okay. Breakfast Club. I've always been in detention before. Have you ever turned that into an existential, study of your guys? Like, not really. And that's what Gattaca was. So if you guys don't know, Gattaca is, they call it retrofuturism. Like, everything looks like a 1950s film noir, like the suits, the cars, the buildings. They filmed it in Brazil because they had a lot of these buildings. Do you remember when they talked about like the nuclear age, the future of tomorrow, today? And they'd always have these amazing brutalist / avant-garde like skyscrapers and stuff. Like that vibe, that visual aesthetic, which is, I think it was a great choice. It's the future, but it's also the past. And the main character on there was Vincent. And Vincent lived in a world where they made designer babies. They could genetically alter people to be better. And so people would start making I want all my kids to be 6 feet tall with no tattoos and debt. You know what I mean? Blue eyes, no cancer, no whatever. And the one parents, they were kind of old school. They're like, you know what? We don't want to make sure he doesn't have like cancer or anything, but we'd rather leave a lot of it up to chance. And so they basically, because they had their traditional views, they doomed their son to a life of poverty because like he didn't have the genes. They would do genetic tests. Like, yeah, you can't be a cop. You'll have a heart attack at 40. You're out. And so he was basically a janitor his whole life, but he always wanted to be an astronaut. And so he studied hard, and he worked his ass off, and he lied on his resume. But it was just he couldn't get past the genetic test. And then it turns out then the idea the author had here is there's a black market. Just because you're a genetic specimen, just because you're the Justin Waller of things, doesn't mean you're guaranteed a good life. And the example there is he showed, what's the other guy's name? Not Vincent, not Anton. Jerome. Jerome was like the perfect Olympiad. He came in second place at some swim meet when he should have won first place. It was like the Olympics or something. Got into a car accident, broke his back. Paralyzed. Can't earn money, can't do nothing. He sells his genetic information on the black market. And the idea is Vincent and Jerome switch places. Trading places, but fun. And they put a line in there, which is it really describes the whole movie, where the main character's boss goes, people can't outperform their potential. Well, it's like, well, what happens if somebody were to cheat your guys' tests? It goes, no, it just means we weren't accurately able to detect his potential. And that's kind of like what the point of Jerome is to show that human potential can't be tested or created in a lab. There's something special. And you're like, how does he do this? How is he able to outperform people that are genetically his superior? And you see it. He like runs on a treadmill and he makes it look like it's just effortless, but then he goes in the bathroom and just starts throwing up. He basically almost killed himself. Or when he has to do the same work. He's like a million keystrokes. He's never made a single mistake on doing his flight path for his flight to Neptune or whatever planet he was going to. Like, he has to be better than perfect, because not only does he have to be perfect, but he has to hide his tracks of his previous genetic thing there. It's fucking amazing. Like, the one part I love about it was Uma Thurman is the love interest there. And at one point she wants to sleep with him, but she's been filled with so much dread about you're never going to be genetically perfect. She thinks she's ugly. Uma Thurman. 30-year-old Uma Thurman. I'm ugly. I'm post-wall because I don't have the right genes for it. She steals his hair, does a genetic test, scares you because you're like, oh my God, is she going to find out? And it turns out, no, he's just really good at covering his tracks. She finds the Jerome hair. Turns out you're everything they say you were. I'd love to sleep with you, you know. And through that, he kind of teaches you to be better. He teaches you to want to be like, I want to be better. This guy can do it. And he teaches everybody around him the same thing. Everybody who wants to be better. How the hell is he doing this? How the fuck is he doing this? Even his brother, who ends up being a cop, finding him. And then there's this scene where, as a kid, they always used to swim. It was like one of the Great Lakes or something like that. They always swim out to see who could make it farther. And Vincent and Anton, the brothers, Anton always did better than him because they were like, I'm not going to make the mistake with the first kid. The second kid, they made him genetically perfect. But he could never beat him. He never beat him until one day he beat him. And his brother almost drowns and he has to save him, bring him back to shore. And then that was the day that, you know, the Anton Jerome or Vincent Jerome moves out, tries to make his life a thing. And so at the end of the movie, they find out there was like a murder mystery that they're trying to solve, and that's how it drives the plot forward, right? And at the end, they find out he wasn't the murderer. It was somebody else that they didn't expect. Genetically, he doesn't have an aggressive bone in his body. Why did he do this? Well, this guy was trying to cancel the space program, so fucking I murdered him. And they're like, oh, maybe we can. And it was like your way of knowing, like, just because you think you can test all this stuff, maybe you can't. Your genetic test said there's no way this guy was the murderer, and you were wrong. So the guy that they thought, which was, you know, the Vincent character, because he left a piece of DNA there, they're like, all right, so you didn't murder him. And so the brother and him is like, let's go do the lake then. Come on. And like, let's see. He's like, all right, let's see. How are you doing any of this? And they go and they swim in the lake. And again, against all odds, Vincent beats Anton in the swim. He almost drowns. He has to drag him back. They get back to shore. And he's like, and this was like the perfect example for why I call this a masculine movie. He goes, how did you do it? You basically managed to lie to everybody and pretend to be the greatest man on earth, and you pulled it off. How did you do it? And he goes, it's the same way I beat you swimming. He goes, what do you mean? I never saved anything for the swim back. And I was like, I fucking love that, man. I love that. It's like, and you see some platitude guy on Twitter talking about burning the bridges behind you. Make sure you burn your ships when you go, so you never come back. That's shitty. But this one fucking resonates, man. And I was like, that's what makes a movie good. When it gives you that, like, just hits you. I don't know how to explain it. It's just fucking great. Yeah, Foundation for Economic Education has a good video on Gattaca. I'll bet they do. But I love that. Like, as a guy, how can you not watch that? Hey, just don't save anything for the swim back. Like, fucking go for it. Do it. And I remember, and then here's the thing too. Like, you might even think, and this is where they really get me. And I love this part. It's the way it always gets me every time, man. Where they talk about this, and yeah, all I have to do is just fucking work harder, be smarter, be better. I can do it. But it's not enough, because right at the end, you thought he won. He did all the work. He got on the trip. He's on the flight. Everything is done. It's perfect. He got the girl. He didn't commit the murder. He showed his brother. He taught everybody around him to be a better person. Now he's flying to his Uranus, I think. Or Saturn. Anyways, he's going to get on the spaceship and go up. Even Jerome, he was like, dude, you, and he kind of explains how, like, the genetic side of things, right? He's like, I had all of this stuff. I was supposed to be perfect. I still only came in second. And that's why I ended up in the wheelchair. I walked in front of the car. And that was him, because he couldn't meet the genetic potential that they told him he had. He actually almost killed himself. But he's like, you taught me to be better. You took my genes and you made them into what their potential could have been, which is, I thought that was a nice, interesting touch. And then so he ends up, he kills himself at the end of this one. He's like, that's it. I've done my genetic potential. I'm good. And he gave Jerome enough, like, biological material to live the rest of his life as Jerome and live his life to the best thing. And he's like, I can die happy. And I was like, that's sweet. But it was right at the end, man. They slip a final piss test in before they go to space. It's like, what's this? It's a new thing they're doing just in case, piss test. And of course, this is the one thing that he wasn't prepared for. So he's like, right then, I'm about to get on my spaceship, do my lifelong dream. I've done everything. I didn't save anything for the trip back, and now this one piss test is going to ruin me. So he starts breaking down. He's like, just know, man, I was better than everybody. Like, I did it. And the doc was like, yeah. And the doc's been talking to him throughout the whole movie about his son, right? And he kind of has to pretend like he's like an asshole, because everybody who's genetically superior is an asshole. And he goes, I keep trying to tell you about my son. And he's not even listening to that. He's just like, yeah, I would have been the best. I could have done it. Like, my son's a huge fan of yours. I should have been the best. Yeah, it's like he wants to be an astronaut, but they say he doesn't have the marks for it. But who knows? Who knows what he could do? And then, of course, Jerome or Vincent fails the piss test, and it shows his old ID and not the new Jerome one. And then the doc looks up to him, hits a button, deletes that thing. And he's like, just for future reference, right-handed people don't hold it with their left. It's just a thing. Like that little tip on how to be better at hiding that he's Vincent, not Jerome. And that's when he kind of stops babbling and he realizes this whole time there was people that knew that were rooting for him. They didn't like any of this stuff too. So he realized he kind of influenced everybody around him to be a better person. And I love that part too. No man is an island kind of stuff, right? Never save anything for the swim back. Inspired other people to the point that they helped him in ways he didn't even know. So we're all in this together. And then he tells him he misses flight. Oh, dude, I'm not even... Yeah, Ernest Borgnine's janitor character also helped him along the way in the deleted scene. I wish they'd have kept it in. I do too. It would have been great. Yeah, see, Akaz is in here. He's got the... Like, the lines they had were awesome. There is... And they're not like... They're kind of one-liners in the same way that action movies have, but in their one-liners, they're a way of telling the audience what the story is about. I only gave you my body, you gave me your dream. Absolutely. One of the best lines from Jerome. Or the janitor, he did help him along the way too. Yeah, a whole bunch of those. I'm convinced a great movie director can go into a theater and do a great job directing it too. A lot do. So yeah, it's just, but it's like, you don't get that anymore. You don't. And a lot of the people that made these movies in like the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, they worked for people in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. They came out of the Second World War. They were at Vietnam. They came back. They brought their experience to become amazing storytellers, amazing filmmakers. They were there. They invented the techniques that made things famous. And then the people that worked under them made the second generation of things that made things awesome and great in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. And those people got Me Too'd. Removed from the industry because how dare a man do this? And then they brought a bunch of theater kids in. And there's like a whole bunch of stories to explain it, like the narratives around the economics of movies, the internet, streaming. All of this stuff has had an effect. But ultimately, it's just driven to the point where the mainstream movie experience is dead. And there's like the high budget stuff is great spectacle, but it's an amusement park. The mid-budget stuff is decimated because there's no video sales. Streaming just does not have the same money in it. So they die off. It's the same reason that you don't have albums anymore. You just have singles because of Spotify. Same thing. And now the only things you have left are the billion-dollar spectacles and the $10,000 indie films, which there might be good ones, but that's the problem now, is the skill now isn't learning to appreciate a good movie. The skill now is being able to find a good movie. So it's like you have to work harder for entertainment. And people aren't going to work harder to be entertained. They're going to take what's available. And there's another effect called the MP3 effect, which you've never heard of. It kind of explains why we're all just kind of like, I guess this is what it is now. And I refuse to do the MP3 effect. So the MP3 effect was, there was a study in California. What do they call it? What's the fucking university in there? It starts with a B. Anyways, the University of California, whatever. Berkeley, where the guy had records, he had tapes, and he had MP3s. And you would notice that the sound quality of MP3s, there's always a consistent static. It's a lossless, or it's a lossy format, as opposed to like reel-to-reel tapes, which are a lossless format. In other words, you have all the information and analog stuff, right? And people would have to say, what do you prefer? And people would always say the quality on this one is better. But the thing he was noticing is that every year he was teaching his class, all of a sudden people started to prefer the MP3 sound. They actually preferred having the static in there. And it sounded weird to have the higher quality stuff. Now, there's been some speculation on whether that is because the younger generations grew up on the MP3, so they prefer the MP3, where older generations were raised on reel-to-reels, 8-tracks, and analog, and so they prefer the clearer, crisper sound of analog. But then the take that I've always gotten from it is that we will trade accessibility for quality at all times. And that goes for everything. We used to love fancy aristocratic drinks, fancy meals, but then mass production made it so the Queen of England drank the same Coca-Cola that you drank. The great democratizing force was industrialization. And then what happened? Well, mass-produced food is largely shit. McDonald's is not the greatest hamburger, but everybody eats McDonald's. You know why? Because everybody gets that same McDonald's experience. It is the greatest hamburger that you can make consistently everywhere in the world. That's the MP3 effect. You can make the greatest hamburger on earth. You can go to a fancy restaurant and get that. And yes, people do. There's people that love it. But for the most part, McDonald's will always sell more hamburgers than the fanciest hamburger place. It's the MP3 effect in action. And we're the same place with movies. And that's why I'm worried now when I start seeing guys like Jack in the chat talking about how great the prequels were for Star Wars. And I'm just like, I fucking hate you. You know? Yeah, we are the stories we tell ourselves. Only listening to waves, analog is slowly coming back. Slowly, but marginally. And it's never going to be more than a niche. It's like a rebellion against popular culture. The hipster back in the day used to be about the obscure thing. Oh, you don't know about this. This is the fanciest coffee. You've never heard of it. This is the greatest band. You don't know who Arcade Fire is. Now what's the hipster? Oh, I consume the things that we used to make. It's like they just become nostalgia critics, nostalgia curators. They were, don't lie to yourself. Yeah, I love the plot, the convoluted plot that makes no sense. Yeah, so I don't know if it's going to be limited to old films, but I may want to look into The Founder, about the history of McDonald's with Michael Keaton. I've heard of that one. It's on my list. I don't know. The channel's still new, so I can do anything with it. But for now, what I am sticking to is the idea of, it's good stories executed competently. You know?
Mouse. Do you love science fiction but hate how it's not masculine enough? Do you yearn for those simple, timeless stories? Stories that resonate with something deep in your soul? What the fuck? Stories. Perfectly told. A movie that doesn't have to keep your attention with giant explosions, sarcastic banter, gratuitous nudity for no reason other than it's awesome. A movie that will make you tear up so much that you have to pretend it's lame and laugh so that your friends don't think you are a sissy. Well, I have the movie for you. We bring you the greatest movie that aged like a fine Romulan ale. It's the movie where Moby Dick meets Charles Dickens, meets the duelists, meets a science fiction western, meets our own awareness of our mortality. In Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
I love my work, man. See, now Chuck's talking. He's got like 100 different reasons why it's happening. I agree with all of them. Absolutely. The loudness wars, the simplification of music, the one guy has been writing albums for there's like 100 different reasons, but here's the thing. It's all convergent. It's all driving to a single direction. And the reasons I don't think matter as much as you think, where it's just more accessible, lesser quality is always preferred over higher quality, but harder to access. Yeah, I watched Scream and realized I didn't pick up my phone even once. That's the other thing. And that's the one thing I think is probably going to be why the channel is going to stick mostly to, I didn't want to say old movies, just older. Because there's a bunch from the 2000s. And the 2000s is only like less than 20, well, I guess it's 20 years ago. Oh, I just became one of those guys like the 90s was 10 years ago. No, dude, the 90s was 30 years ago. Like, Jesus. But I'm probably going to do all kinds. Like, there's going to be. I, I I want to avoid the really popular stuff. Like, I would love to do a Kurosawa samurai film because I actually loved watching them. I might even do it as like a contra, like post Seven Samurai with what are the Dirty Dozen, not the Dirty Dozen, the cowboy version of it. Why am I not remembering the name of it? And then like 13 Assassins, anyways. But I'm like, yeah, I could do that. But then every film nerd worth his salt has a long-winded Kurosawa thing, so I'm probably not going to do that. Or Star Wars, I'm probably not going to do that. I want to pick the stuff that you probably don't see on YouTube. I don't want to see shit that film student nerds have videos on. I want to have stuff that, yeah, no Clueless discussion. no, we're not going to do Clueless. The Count of Monte Cristo is a good choice. It's not on my list though. So, like what I've got right now, I Come in Peace, King of the Kickboxers, Gattaca, Rambo 3. Again, I want to do Predator, but it's not on the list. Same as Die Hard, I took those ones off the list. The Long Kiss Goodnight, I would argue one of the best Christmas films. Do I want to do the Andy Sedaris films? I don't know those ones. I'd have to go look. Are there any good movies that are liked by both audience and critics? Pulp Fiction, Fight Club? Maybe. I've just never concerned myself with critical anything. So I'm like, who the fuck are you that I need to listen to your opinion? Like, do I really think that I didn't want to watch Star Wars because Critical Drinker had 500 videos about how he hates the fucking Space Karen? No. I don't give a shit about his opinion. I realized after a while, which version of it? Probably the, you know, the one. The Monte Cristo one that came out in, I think it was the 2000s. Probably that one, because that's the one I know, right? Lord of the Rings got unanimous praise. Yeah, I'm not going to do Lord of the Rings either. Again, the stuff that's too popular, I don't like that. I want to show appreciation for stuff that it was good, but not necessarily known. Oh, Way of the Gun. That's one. I might do that after Gattaca, but I might save that. There's two movies I really want to do, but I want to wait until I'm good enough at making videos in this format that I do them justice. Way of the Gun is one. I would argue Way of the Gun is probably one of the greatest films you've ever seen. I cannot praise it enough. Like, you think I love Gattaca, Way of the Gun. Fucking amazing. Just two drifters stealing some billionaire's surrogate, and it's like one of the greatest films ever. James Caan, all that shit. The other one I'll let you know. Yeah, do you like any Nolan films? I don't mind the Nolan. Like, I liked The Dark Knight. What else did Nolan do? He did all the Batmans, Interstellar, and that. Here's the thing. Like, I know he's good at his little spectacle, and like Inception was good too, but the only reason I'm probably not going to do newer films for a long time is because I want to catch movies that I've watched more than once. And for Nolan films, I watched them when they came out, and then I didn't really watch them for a long time. Like, I probably haven't watched any of the, like, I've watched Dark Knight. I watched like, that's when I still enjoy. But I noticed for a lot of these films, I loved it the first time I watched it, and then I'll go back and watch it again, and I'll be like, actually, yeah. Like, once the novelty wears off. Like, I've noticed for most of the Marvel films, I used to love until, like, I was like everybody else. Until Endgame, I'd watch every Marvel film. And my girl and I, just like for funsies, we went back and started watching them, and we realized, like, most of them aren't very good. The original Iron Man was good. The Captain America Civil War was good, but most of them just were kind of like, they were good because they were spectacle. But once we finished watching them, they have like no rewatchability. And that's what I'm looking for. The rewatchability, the fact that I can like appreciate them on multiple viewings, sometimes even for multiple different reasons. Yeah, even Captain Marvel. Yeah, Tenet was such a masturbatory experience for him to his detriment. And that's the thing. So, like, there's a lot of Stallone films that fall for that same issue where they become Stallone's like, how can this make me look awesome? Rambo 3, you even kind of start to see the start of that where he's like, dude, I can make a movie that shows off how fucking awesome I am. But it was just at the cusp of how much of that you want and how much of that is too much. So like Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. I was like, eh. Judge Dredd, eh. Demolition Man. Everybody talks about that one is great, but if you watch it, it really is. It's a Stallone vehicle. Or he even did that one melodrama, the Specialist, where he plays the assassin, and Sharon Stone wants to help him kill, and James Woods is like the villain in that. It's like a Miami Vice melodrama for men. It should be better. It should. It's just too much of Stallone thinking about how awesome Stallone is. Same thing as Assassins. So I can't do those, at least not like with the same fervor I'm doing Wrath of fucking Khan. Movies that couldn't be made today, Everybody talks about Blazing Saddles. Really? Blazing Saddles is a Mel Brooks film, like a subversive Mel Brooks film. Hey, I'm just going to drop a bunch of N-bombs in there about the Wild West to make a satire of a Western movie. They'd still do every movie right now is technically a Mel Brooks film. It's just they're not funny. Oh my God, the white guy's the villain. Oh, yeah, well, that's so subversive. Where are the white women at? That's exactly what the problem is now. See, yeah, Lucky Number 11. I wouldn't put that on par of Way with the Gun, but it's got that same like ensemble cast. It kind of, if I were to do here, if you like Lucky Number 11, I would say you would have a much better time watching the director's cut of Payback. Payback is a fucking good one. Tango and Cash, good one. Cliffhanger, cross the line, I think. Big Trouble in Little China, that's another film. I want to wait until I'm good enough for They Live and Big Trouble in Little China. Everybody talks about They Live. There's tons of like film reviews about They Live, but Big Trouble in Little China, I would argue, was probably, they gave one of the best American directors a Hong Kong action film, like a Hong Kong period piece action film, and he just nailed it. He fucking nailed it. It had the best parts of like the American Western mixed with Hong Kong action, Chinese theater, and they mashed it together. That's the one thing that's the greatest about 80s movies too, is because they were experimental. In the 50s, it was mostly about, honing the genre. And in the 60s, it was perfecting the genre. And in the 70s, it was subverting the genre. And in the 80s, it was like mixing up the genres. That's why Predator was so good, because it wasn't an action movie. It was a horror film with wearing a skin suit of an action film. That's why Total Recall was great. It was a sci-fi film wearing an action suit skin suit. That's why RoboCop was great. It was a Western wearing a sci-fi robot Jesus coming of age skin suit. They mixed genres together. Alien was a horror movie with science fiction. It was like absolutely awesome. Payback was a remake of an older film. I thought the old one was called Payback too. That's the other thing too. Like, how do you approach those? How do I want to talk about them? Do I want to watch the original and compare them? I don't think I do. I like them standing on their own. And I don't want to start talking about remakes. Bruce Lee movies. Yeah, I mean, dude, Bruce Lee and old Jackie Chan. The only reason I'm not jumping at those right now is because there's so many, and it could make an entire channel of just the Bruce Lee classics, or the Jet Lis, or the what's his name, Tony Jaa, or any Hong Kong star. You can make your own ones on that, right? Because you could do Fist of Fury, you could do Chinese Connection, you could do Enter the Dragon, you could do, was it Return of the Dragon? The one where they kind of made it up afterwards. That one's pretty shitty though. Nobody really wants to watch that. That was just some random found footage. That was like the Blair Witch Project of Bruce Lee movies. They don't really hold up as well, by the way. I hate to tell you this. Other than Enter the Dragon, you watch most of the old Bruce Lee films and you're like, they're really awesome because they were the newest thing. They weren't the best thing. Jackie Chan far exceeded what Bruce Lee was capable of. And if I were to do Jackie Chan, I would probably pick movies like Rumble in the Bronx. His entering of he filmed him in Vancouver. He was doing the entering the Canadian or the American market. And I think it was good because they had to tone down what a Jackie Chan movie was, but they made it in a way that like the first action comedy for Western audiences, basically. It was really good. Yeah, there's the Thing. But you know what? That's the problem with the Thing. Everybody talks about the fucking Thing. So I don't want to talk about it since everybody's already done it. As long as you have an appropriate alibi, you can have some freedom. Borat, not being the white guy with a podcast. Yeah, Jason and the Argonauts. If you want to get, I might start doing some like really old stuff too, like Jason and the Argonauts, or Flash Gordon. The girl was like, do Flash Gordon. I'm like, I would like to do Flash Gordon. That actually is a good choice. Yeah, the wheelchair kids with the unhealthy obsession with his cushion. Yeah, but you see what I mean? There's like 100 different options, and so it's really hard to have to pick. So I have to be judicious. I gotta go, and for the most part, I'm just picking off of vibes. But yeah, I figure Mask of Zorro, it's another one of those that's like a perfect movie, but you didn't really appreciate it at the time because at the time it was just, all the movies are like this. But now that they don't exist anymore, you're like, dude, that's actually pretty good. The Mask of Zorro should have been as popular as Star Wars. Same as Highlander. I want to do Highlander, but I don't want to do Highlander until I'm ready for it. Because I might do, and this is going to be such an unpopular opinion, but I might do Highlander 2. Because that was my introduction to the series, and I really liked it. I really liked it, but I have to watch it again to make sure I still like it. And it's not just cool back then because of what it did. Yeah. Anyways, we're going to go, and the boys are going to do Rule Zero. I might be there. Yeah, there's Once Upon a Time in Mexico, America, all that stuff too. Who's hosting it? If you guys are into that stuff, they have a podcast they're doing over on my buddies hearing here. Jack, you see him. Oh, I can't. Oh, no, I can do redirects. Okay, good. Oh, I don't have it. So I'm going to try and redirect. So after you're watching this one, you can watch guys talking about the red pill stuff if you're into that. And if not, don't worry about it. I won't fault you for it. They're going on in about half an hour. Who the fuck is hosting it? I don't even know. All right, well, you'll have to beat it on your own. Flash Gordon, I love that Gordon is supposed to be liner for the Jets the one time they won the Lombardi. It's been done, but Full Metal Jacket, you can speak from military experience. Well, I can't. That's the problem. We all watched Full Metal Jacket in basic, and we were so mad that's not the experience we got. And that's the other thing. So Kubrick, great example, but the problem is everybody's done Kubrick. So do I really want to do Kubrick? I probably am not. I'm going to do my best to get the stuff that I don't think gets nearly enough recognition first. But then, like I said, I got like 30 videos on my list. So by the time I get to that and I got to do some more, and if I'm doing them once a week, I'll probably have to hit all these ones. So we'll see. Anyways, thanks for sticking around. I'll check you guys later. Oh, do I have any more review movies I can put up there? No? All right, you know what? We're going to... Oh, there it is. We're going to end on a high note.
Do you like karate? Do you like intense action, foreign lands? Do you like revenge? Do you like gratuitous nudity for no reason other than it's awesome? Have you ever watched a movie then decided you needed to beat your brother's ass after watching it? Well, we have the film for you. A movie so action-packed and emotionally resonant that it hits harder than your parents' funeral. Inspired by the best parts of a dozen different action movies and the timeless grace of the Chinese opera, the breakout role of international film star and Taibo master Billy Blanks, I bring you The King of the Kickboxers, 1990.